You see, you're looking at the symbolism of the goddess female. You're looking at her cauldron or her cave, her box. And that's why the sword is the phallic instrument that pierces into the cauldron of the goddess. So you see, this is exactly why you have the symbolism of the cauldron and the sword, thus the chalice and the sword, the symbols of the sex magic between the male and the female aspects. So you see, this is why Satanism is based around satanic sex magic rituals. And that's why Anton LaVey carries the sacred phallic sword, and thus his symbol is the symbol of the Leviathan, the symbol of the Church of Satan that represents the Leviathan of the goddess of the deep abyss. So you see, this is why Satanism worships the horny goat, the goat head, the Pan of fertility, the goat or the god of sexual fertility in both the male and the female, thus the Baphomet that is both male and female. So the yin and the yang are within one, and the annual year is within one. So you see, Satanism and Christianity, for example, are really within one. They are just polar opposites of the same beast. Thus, the Bible is all about sex magic and astrotheology. Thus, the symbols of Christianity or the religions of the world have the same symbolism. So you see, that's why Yahweh of the Bible uses his phallic sword to slay the Leviathan, goddess, dragon, or serpent of the abyss. So you can see why the goddess is portrayed as the black demon goddess of death and evilness. She is the demon or the deity of the moon, the deity or the goddess of the night. So this is why we have a black widow, which is a female spider that kills her male counterpart. Thus, a widow is one who survives and lives past the death of her male counterpart. So this is why the Black Widow is dressed in black in the film Iron Man 2, the goddess of the black abyss with the Iron Man, which is the man of Mars. Thus, Venus and Mars, the male and the female. This is why Mars needs moms. And of course, the chemical element of Fe is the chemical element of iron, thus the female. And like I've said before, this is why the symbol of Volvo, the car maker, has the vulva and the symbol of Mars, which is the sex magic of the male and the female. And by the way, did you notice that the Black Widow of evilness, the female goddess, has the symbolism of the red hair? Thus we have the lady in red, thus the female goddess or the goddess of evilness that is always portrayed with the red hair, the symbol of the fiery blood of death, the demon goddess of evilness and sexual lust. So like I've said before, when you watch your Hollywood films and movies, keep an eye out for the lady in red or the lady with red hair, the character of the goddess with red hair, the demon goddess of death and sexual fertility. Like the red-haired Fiona in the movies called Shrek, which brings me to the Satanist Anton LaVey. And of course, once again, we have the symbolism of the red hair, like his daughter, Zena LaVey. So you see, Fiona is really supposed to be Zena LaVey. You see, Zena LaVey is actually known as Zena Shrek because she married Nicholas Shrek. You see, Xena is the little princess of the king Anton LaVey, the king of the Satanic Church, and thus Fiona is the princess of the king. So it is believed that the movie Shrek was made after Nicholas and Xena Shrek, thus the attention to the ears of Shrek, because Nicholas Shrek cut off his right ear, exactly like Vincent van Gogh. And like most Hollywood films, it has the element of witches. And of course, the whole movie is based around a child-eating monster org. And of course, Shrek is green because he represents the green horniness, which comes from the horns of the horned animal, because it is a element or a symbol of the element of springtime, which is the time of the green man, the time of renewal for the year. It's giving life and sexual fertility to the new year that will come. Which is why witches are also green, because they represent the springtime fertility of nature. And the green man, or the ancient horned one, is the one that represents the fertility of the forest or of nature. So you see, almost every religion of the world really revolves around the true essence of nature and the seasons from winter to summer. And this is the paradox, or the paradigm, or the parallel worlds within one world. And like I said, the two seasons, or the twins, or the brothers, or even the sisters, struggle one another. The ancient seasons of winter and summer, the horned god of the summer and the horned one of the winter. So the old dying king fights the fertility of the new green horned one of springtime, the spring lamb or the spring rabbit of fertility. So Shrek represents the ancient green man, or the druid of the forest, and the tree that symbolizes the forest. So Shrek is a green org, and the word org is actually related to the word orgy, the Orgian or the Orgia, the ancient Greek mystery cults of Dionysus, also known as Bacchus, which is the god of wine and fertility. And these Dionysian or Bacchanalian cults would have sexual fertility orgies. And this aspect of sexual fertility can be seen throughout the films of Shrek, which is exactly why it's about him finding a mate and having little orgs. So the sex fertility of the green man, or the ogre, is the origin of many words like origin or original. And the origin is the root foundation from the source, thus the source from the underworld, to rise like from the dead, thus rise from hell or from Tartarus. Which is why the Orcus are the gods from the underworld, the demons, and of course this gives us the orcs. And the orcs, as you can see, are always green, and usually with horns. And of course they are ugly. And the origin gives us our word organization, to organize, as in a business organization that was created from the origin, or the org. And believe it or not, we also get our word organ from the org, because the organs are found in the underworld of our body. And of course, the male and the female genitalia is known as an organ, which is an instrument or a tool to be used. So perhaps now you will understand the essence and the root foundation, or the origin of the word orgasm. And that's exactly why we have an urge. And we also have other words like organisms that also come from the org. Thus, we have the green fertility of the forest, or the green of nature, in the word organic. So anyway, now you see why Shrek comes from the primordial abyss of the swamp, and why Shrek emerges and lives from the sacred roots of the sacred tree. So the ogre or the orc Shrek, the green man, has his serpent or his dragon, which is why the Bible has the sacred tree and the serpent. And that's why many people will tell you that Jesus was actually sacrificed on a tree, not on a T or a cross. Because the serpent or the dragon represents the primordial force of nature. And that's why you have the serpent, the tree, and Adam and Eve, or the two forces of the night and the day, or the sun and the moon. And that's exactly why Moses also has the pole with the sacred serpent, and why he says that Jesus must also be hung up like the serpent on the pole. And it's just like the Mayans who worship Kukulkan, who is the sun serpent. And this theme is continued in Germanic Scandinavian lore as well. The bull horns of Odin, and of course he is related with the serpent and the pole. And of course he is hung in a tree. And this is exactly why Apollo, the sun god, is also related with the bull horns and, of course, the sacred pole or tree and the serpent. So like I said, the origin came from the ancient Greek Orgian or the Orgia, the mystery cults of Dionysus, the god of the underworld who is slain and reborn. And these ancient Dionysian cults were also known for holding the serpents or the snakes. And of course, Bacchus or Dionysus, the god of death and rebirth, is the god of wine, which is why the slain god Jesus, the god of death and rebirth, is the god of wine. And notice Dionysus with his sacred phallic pole or tree, and of course the vine, which represents the serpent winding around it. So you see, this is why Dionysus and Jesus or Jesus actually share the same etymology in their name, meaning the dios or the two. This is why we have the two worlds or a dimension, which means the two worlds within the one world, the two dimensions. Because Dionysus was the wanderer, he was the traveler, the traveling fool, who went to the underworld and then was reborn again to the above world. The death and resurrection gods of Dionysus and thus of Jesus, the wanderer, who dies and thus is sacrificed and comes back again. So you see, this is why we have the story of Dionysus who rides the donkey, which is why Shrek rides the donkey. Thus, the story of King Solomon, or the sun and the moon, that rides the donkey. And this is exactly why Jesus also rides the donkey. And of course, Jacob, the traveling fool, also rides the donkey. So you see, in the world of politics, which represents the pole ice of the earth, that which stands between the two realms of the winter and the summer, or the day and the night, the sun and the moon, in politics we have the Republicans and the Democrats, which is represented by the sun and the moon, the day or the ray. Thus, we have the donkey and the elephants. And the donkey represents the ones that are from the underworld, the moon. So anyway, now you see why Christians drink the blood or the wine of Jesus, the one that is sacrificed for their sins. Which is the same exact story with Dionysus, the god of wine, and the green man that represented nature. This is exactly why the god of death and rebirth, Tammuz, was also known as the green man. And of course, Apollo, the horned one, was also known as the green man.